You don't know what you're going to find. And so typically, something that's got a probability of success of about 30% is something that they think is drillable. So it's likely to get drilled. So it shifts around that way. Okay, so the GPOS, you often hear people will say, oh, we're going out to drill this exploration well. Chances are he's going to be smacking the ball over the mid-wicket boundary for 4 or 6 every time. He's going to score a lot of runs if you continue to bowl at that leg stump. Pretty much the same deal with the middle stump, the P50 type outcome. If that makes it difficult for people to work out whether they should then invest further in a project, having found an exploration undeveloped. And at current oil prices, I can't see it ever being developed. There probably belongs on the next slide, but then the maps would be too small. So Scarborough is a field that was discovered in the 80s, here at Middle Arm at Darwin. At the same time, Shell were looking at their Prelude project, which is a floating LNG project. It has been built and commissioned, and you've probably heard about that. That project in 2011. Part of their farming, part of their reason for buying in was they want LNG back to Korea. And they agreed to fund 3 appraisal wells in that field. Those appraisal wells was, and that's what you see there. The Bayou Undone field was what ConocoPhillips had developed back in the early 2000s to feed the Darwin LNG plant.
One of my last questions as we go. How long is that expected to go? Because I'm looking at it and going, well, it's a northwest shelf for potentially running well in 5 or 6 years. What about the Ichthys ones? Browns being going over to Darwin?
Will probably still be full for another 10 years or so. So probably early 30s it might come off plateau. Actually, we think it's developable. Started putting the project together on it. And then Cooper Energy bought into it. And if you remember a few years ago, Santos had some cash flow issues. They spent a lot of money on Gladstone LNG and then oil and LNG. Yeah. And so for every molecule of gas, or for every group of molecules of gas you get out of the ground, you lose, say, 15 or 20%. Again, the Gorgon story I find quite interesting because they basically locked themselves into developing that project on a nature reserve, a Class A nature reserve, on a remote island back in 2002. Yeah. Now they didn't actually environment and still protect it. And 7 years later on, they were basically locked in because they had to change the Ballarat Parliament. They actually had to go to Parliament to change the law to enable them to carry out the project. Yeah. And having done that, very difficult to backtrack.
Backing investment now in Australia?
Yes, I do.
How much? How do you think? How much is affecting? I don't know, jobs or student like us? We want to find a job. That I don't know. How is that affecting us as a student? That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. Can I ask that in terms of what I see happening, funnily enough, is different people investing. So if I go back to...
Told me, hey Christian, you should trust just in seismic. Seismic is everything. And I said, yes sir, okay, I'm gonna follow your advice. Then we were exploring pretty much 6 kilometers, one well where the seismic showing nothing. And there are plenty of techniques that can show us the same outcome that seismic. I realized that the exploration doesn't have any future at all. Why? Because we don't have money for implementing seismic. It's really expensive. 2, we don't have money for explore anymore because the market is going down. And three, the people just keep believing in seismic and seismic for exploration. So my point is, and after this like a brief explanation, what's the future of exploration? We have future of exploration, or we don't have future of exploration. Why? The last point, because big companies such as Woodside, BP, Shell, they said, I don't want to explore anymore. I just want to develop this current project, and that's it.
But they've done that before, I would say. So at the moment, I think there is a push for non-exploration based activities. So we see it in our work as well. A lot of transactions, people want production or near production. So projects that they know something about and are being de-risked to a certain extent. But actually, in the last year probably, the market has come back again for people to invest in exploration, I think. So I understand where you're coming from. I guess a lot of big companies are saying we're not really that keen on exploration at the moment, is what I would say. I think the subtext of that is that at the moment, because of business conditions, at the moment, we're not that keen on exploration. But we're seeing smaller companies are, and there are transactions happening in smaller areas. So whilst we're talking about that, we lost by the Quadrant assets 2 years ago, I think it was now. Yeah, 2 years ago, that's good. At the time, they were exploring the Dorado field. And so during the acquisition process, it was a discovery. We try not to forecast too much. Sometimes we have to, but we sort of go, okay, we'll try and caveat our forecast and sort of go, there's a big range of outcomes that might happen here. And with that in mind, I look at where we are now and say, where are we moving to? I've seen that solar energy has increased in efficiency.